Good evening and welcome to Dog Talk. I'm Dan Camilleri.
And I'm Laura McKillop. We'd like to start by thanking Enduro for their ongoing support in bringing you our live weekly Q&A. Tonight we're fortunate enough to be speaking with Bear, the dog behaviourist.
Bear will be picking who he thinks has asked the best question of the night, and they'll win a bag of Enduro, high-energy food for working dogs with Real Kangaroo Meat.
Hey Bear, how are you going?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Thanks for giving us your time tonight.
That's all right.
How's your day, buddy?
Not too bad.
What did you get up to today?
Training a couple of dogs. Had a cattle dog mastiff mix. That was a bit nervous of people and needed a bit of obedience and got through that.
In one piece too. I see you've got both your arms.
Yeah.
Bear, do you want to introduce yourself, where you're from, where you grew up, so our listeners get to know a bit about you?
I grew up on a little farm in Victoria originally, and then moved into town for a bit, and then family moved overseas, and then hopped on the first plane and came back here.
Yeah.
And over here, mate, you met your lovely wife.
I met my
Chantel.
lovely wife, yes.
Yeah.
And
Two young, beautiful kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we opened up our dog training business, and we've been doing it ever since. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Beautiful. What kind of breeds were you dealing with back over there?
mainly Belgian Malinois, but Rotties, Dobermans, German Shepherds.
Bit of everything.
Yeah, but mainly Belgian Malinois and
Yeah.
Dutch Shepherds. Dutch Shepherds
Yeah.
and Malinois, yeah, were the majority of the working dogs they use over there.
And they were all training to go to combat?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, not all of them went,
Yeah.
but there's a range of different jobs that we train them to do. So mainly attack dogs, but lots of a variety of different types of attack dogs. So you've got dogs that are trained for house-to-house combat,
Mhm.
dogs that are trained for guerrilla warfare, border patrol, riot dogs. So there's and personal protection dogs, like security type dogs that were used for different events, and yeah.
Yeah, wow. Talk about interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said you're in the kennels there with these particular dogs. What and a bit earlier we were talking over dinner there a bit of like desensitizing pups, like stuff that we see a lot day to day now. How did you guys go back then about like desensitizing them to different environments?
Yeah, so from pretty much get go, I'd start with your desensitizing first and foremost to the smell of first to bomb proof them. We'd start when they were very young with loud noises, even just as they started to eat proper food.
Yep.
We'd scatter the food all over the ground for the pups, so they had to find every little bit and eat it as they develop their nose. We'd desensitize them to loud noises, gunshots, the smell of gunpowder, even from when they were 3 weeks old. And then we'd start their process of getting them comfortable with different terrains first, getting them around in rocky areas over different types of terrain. So we'll take them out in the bush in different areas, and especially playgrounds. They're a real good place for dogs.
Kids playgrounds.
Yeah. Well, obviously when there's no kids. But slides, ladders, bridges, all the different rungs, different things they've got to maneuver around, and then we'd when they were a bit older, we'd take them into town, get them comfortable, get lots of people touching them, get lots of people patting them, get them super comfortable around people, so that we don't want them lunatics. We want them trained for a specific job and being able to be comfortable with people. They've got to be where the essence of their job at the end of the day. A lot of these dogs are trained for house-to-house combat. They're trained to they're civilians in the houses a lot of the time. When there might be a terrorist in the house, and they're bunkered down, and they've got civilians in there.
Yeah.
And there's hostages, and you've got to send a dog in. They've got to identify the threat, and so they've got to be comfortable with people so that they don't go for the wrong target. You know? And so with a lot of training, they're taught to identify who's a civilian, who's a passive, and who's
kind of breaks down the stigma of attack dogs. You don't want them around people, and they've got to learn to hate people and everything. Right?
Yeah, no, that a lot. I see a lot of that these days, and those dogs. It's just more people who aren't that experienced that are that have learned how to basically decoy a dog or annoy him and enough for them to bite them and try to go at them, and they basically have turned that into the whole system on one foot.
Yeah.
So, it's but there's a lot more to it. Just like, working a sheepdog isn't about a dog running after sheep.
Yeah.
They've got to know all the different jobs and when to work sheep and when not to work sheep, and
And we know that's a newfound passion of yours over the last couple of years. So we'll touch base on that a little bit later.
I'm just thinking then, and going back a step, how do you teach them to know which one is the threat?
Yeah, so that's
because that's really interesting. Like, they're going, not blind into these houses, I would imagine, but they've never met any of the people before. How do they know?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question, and so really they're attacking the most aggressive individual in the room, basically.
Yeah,
that's really what they're usually. When someone is in a situation like that, or the terrorists, they're pumping with testosterone and with adrenaline and with and everything is and we do lots and lots daily training with the dogs where and some dogs end up getting qualified to go out, and others that aren't as wise about it don't. They'll be used for other purposes and not so much a purpose like that. More they'll be sent into a home without civilians. If someone's holed up in there or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But the dogs, that's really something that a dog gets good at by themselves in training. So we obviously don't practice with civilians, but when you're practicing with, you've got other soldiers, other decoy, people who are dressed up as civilians and who act like civilians, and others who act like we do lots of mock scenarios where someone screams like they're fearful, and another and mock scenarios where someone's an aggressor and being gruff, and and we teach the dogs to identify which one would be the most likely to be the
one they need to stop.
And obviously, when a dog's again and again hit the target again and again and doesn't miss, then they're suitable to work in real life. Yeah.
So what kind of period, like we mentioned about desensitizing pups and get them going, what kind of structure are you doing? Like, you're doing a bit of obedience training, desensitizing them. Over what kind of period are you looking at, like over 2 years to get a fully trained dog, or 3 years? Are we waiting for them to mature in their head? Like, what are we doing at?
So it really depends on the dog and the handler more than anything, but you'd be looking at around, the dogs get seasoned with time, but where a dog would be ready would be probably around the 2 year to 18 months, 2 years. But dogs start to go out, depending on the duties, they can start going out on duty quite early. So once they, when they're very young, you'd start taking them out on duties even as a young pup. So soldiers do guard duty and do all kinds of patrols and whatever it is, and you might take a seasoned dog that's already experienced, and you might take a young dog with you to learn the job from a very young age. When they're actively going to be used on their own, really would depend on when they're ready, and that could be generally around 2 years, 2.5 years. Yeah, and then they just get wiser as time goes by and better. Yeah.
And also, you'd have limited kennel space. So, what are you looking for milestones within those 2 years where you go, that dog's not going to be suitable, so let's move it on and bring in something else, or you just bear with them, or how does that work?
Yeah, definitely. You're looking for milestones. You'll be they're judged with a lot of scrutiny from pretty much get go, and they're constantly being analysed, and the dogs that aren't meeting the standards of the rest of the dogs in that litter, or the expectation of that breeding. So it really depends on the breeding as well. So just like with the Kelpies, you might have a dog that their genetics, they might become a really amazing dog, but will only mature by about 2 years old, whereas another dog, they mature a lot earlier. And so depending on the breeding, if there's been already a tried breeding before, which there is a lot of tried breeding, where you go, okay, that's a good mix, that one works real well, that creates a real nice dog, then then you'd obviously anticipate. But lots of dogs drop off. There's a lot of dogs that are being bred for that purpose constantly. There might be 100 maybe 50 dogs bred a year, and
That's all right. Yeah.
Keep going.
yeah, there might be 50 dogs that are bred a year, and most of them will drop off. There's only a very small percentage that actually make the cut. The rest of them might go to private security. They might go to first response teams. They might go and then potentially even as pets for people who either compete in dog sports or for or just for
It's always find a purpose for them.
There's a purpose for
There's
each of
something
these
a bit
dogs,
different.
yeah.
And what was you mentioned a couple of different breeds there. What was your, and I already noticed there's some too, but what's your go-to breed for what you were doing there?
Males, mainly. I mean, I like Dutchies as well, but Dutch Shepherds, there's a bit of inconsistent breeding with them, and it's a bit hard to tell what you're going to get.
Yep.
Some of them are absolutely amazing and unstoppable, and others are a little bit busy in the head. And I'm sure there's a lot of Dutch Shepherd breeders out there that would, swear by their breeding, and but when you're talking about breeding and quite a large number of dogs, and the military works like a business, it's got to be cost effective. They've got to hit the target each time, and unknowns are not relied upon. And so, males are really the primary dog that is used.
I was actually doing obviously, we've got a Dutchie and a male here, and I was doing a bit of research there, and back, I think it was during the war, it actually became nearly illegal in some countries to breed dogs, and the Dutchies were near extinct. So they actually had to inject the male back into the Dutchie.
Yeah.
Do you reckon that's where some of that inconsistency could have maybe come in? Obviously, this is hypothetical.
Possibly, but I'm not too sure. But I believe that also in different countries, like you said, the breeding pool, males have quite a large breeding pool all over the world.
Yeah.
They're a very well used breed for protection work, and for many other, for tracking, for a lot of search and rescue, for lots of different things they're used, and especially for dog sports. And so there's a massive gene pool when it comes to males, which means that you can create a lot more stability in the breed. Whereas, with smaller gene pool, you're breeding, and it might just be the country, maybe just over there wasn't a massive gene pool of Dutchies, and maybe in other countries there's a bigger gene pool and a much more stable type breed.
Bit of hidden talent somewhere.
Yeah, but they were the Dutchies that did perform were that were easier to train were amazing. They were incredible, and some of them were a lot better than the males. But it was just hard to kind of rely on it.
The reason I asked that is I was listening back to one of our dog talks the other day, actually on the way down on a long drive, and with Robert Cox, and he said he'd love to see people do like a collie kelpie outcross. But the thing is, you'd have to keep that line tight, and he said you'd have to do it over a period of time to try and keep consistency. And that's why I thought I'd ask that, because you made that comment about the Dutchies there, and I've heard that plenty of other times, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to develop a line to get consistency within the line, because having an outcross got two totally different sets of genetics.
Yeah, 100% for it to kind of balance out.
Yeah.
Because you'll get, certain tendencies of this one, that one, and some crossover tendencies that could potentially create, quite a magnified, behaviour. 100%. Yeah, and it might be something really amazing, or it might be something undesirable. Yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely. No, it's a very interesting subject. But there are a lot of Dutchie male mixes these days in the dog sport industry. I've seen people like to cross them. Yeah, you get
I've seen the Gumtree ones there. Half Dutchies are the brindle ones, the males are the yellow ones. There's a bit of
I've seen
inconsistency.
People they'll breed Dutchies with males, and they'll go, this one in the litter is a male, and that one's a Dutchie. And you're like, you can't judge a breed by its,
appearance.
By appearance. And oh no, that one actually acts like a Dutchie. Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah. I'm sure a judge at a who was judging standard, a breed standard judge would look at that and go, that have no comment.
But and now we mentioned you're back home. your beautiful wife, your 2 young kids. What do you? Well, I know, but for our listeners out there,
What do we
mate,
do?
what do you do now?
I train
Well,
dogs.
the name gives it away, right? Being a dog behaviourist.
Yeah,
So.
so I train dogs for a living. Mainly, we do we're known for working with dogs with behavioural issues, mainly dogs that are aggressive to people or to other dogs, or a bit of both. Dogs with other behavioural issues like self-destructive tendencies, dogs that attack themselves, or spinning incessantly, or other undesirable behaviours.
Yeah,
and we.
You're all right, mate. Sorry, just got a funny message come through there. We won't go down that path. That's all right.
That's all right. Yeah. So we so they so we work with some of them. We also work with people who just want to do high levels of obedience with their dogs. We do a little bit of TV stuff that we've just fallen into recently, and
that's right. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah,
Are you allowed to touch on that? Or?
Oh yeah, you can.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, tell us
No
about
sign.
that. Tell us about that, mate.
Yeah. So just recently we've had our dogs have been in a couple of shows recently. One of them.
Colin from Accounts.
Yeah. From Accounts. All the dogs in episode 8. Other than Colin. They're our dogs. And then now a new movie that's being shot in Sydney called The Fall Guy. One of our dogs is the main actor in that movie as well.
Kelpie, awesome.
Mate, a long way away from your shepherds.
Yeah, and she's my son's Kelpie.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. That's pretty. How'd you get into just the dog training here in Australia?
Well, it was really kind of a bit of an accident. When I first came back to Australia, I didn't even know there was such a thing as civilian dog trainers. I didn't know that people actually, contacted people that are helping with their dog. So I hadn't been in that area at all. There was more military dogs and whatever. And
sorry, that hair in my beard wasn't mine. I think I just got one of Nat's hairs in my drink there. Sorry, mate. I'm looking at your beautiful beard.
I'm ADD. I get super distracted. Bro. What are you doing there? What are we talking about?
You didn't know the dog trainers existed.
So I started doing a plumbing license, and then thought I needed a career, and I was actually it was an accident. I was kind of walking through a park one day and seen someone with a dog, and they were having a bit of trouble, and I approached them and offered them a hand, and they told me to bugger off, and I didn't. Well, I said, basically, I said to him, you look like you're not winning there. Just give me 1 second here. You really can't do any worse than you're doing right now. Give me that dog for 1 minute. Let me show you something. And he liked what he saw, and he said, and I said, give me a ring, and I'll give you a hand on the weekend. And he gave me a ring and gave him a hand, and then one of his mates called me, and then his mate, and then it kind of just started going a bit crazy, and so started charging money for it. I was like, all right, charge money for it then, and I wasn't charging much at the time. If my clients these days knew how much I charged back then, mortified, but they ended up, so just started word of mouth, just went out of control, and we ended up doing 20 hours a weekend. I was doing 10 hours Saturday, 10 hours Sunday, back-to-back session, 2 hours, 5 sessions back-to-back, and and then I just had to make a choice: plumbing, dog training.
Did you finish your plumbing license?
Finished my plumbing, did that, and along the way, and then when I finished up, I stopped doing it.
Yeah, awesome.
Dog training. Yeah.
And you mentioned there that one day someone took you under their wing, and then you come back here and you start an apprenticeship, and you have what we deem as your own apprentice that's come through the rank as well there.
Yeah. So, that's right. So the guy who taught me, not only taught me about dog training, but taught me about myself and how to control myself. I had a lot of problems within myself. I grew up in quite a bit of a violent home, and and had a lot of a lack of trust in people and in authority and in and yeah, had to get over those things, and it taught me a lot about how to work on myself. And part of really a lot of the stuff that I teach my clients about their dogs is really stuff that I worked on with myself as well.
Yeah.
It's not very different. I understand completely how the dogs are feeling, and walking around feeling, in a self-preservational state and feeling like they're alone to deal with the world. And really, a lot of what we do is teaching them that they're not alone and that they're part of a team, raise their self-esteem by giving them a sense of purpose and all the rest of it. But so I've got now, I repeat the cycle, and I've got my own apprentice who started working with me when he was almost 17, and he's 23 now, and he's doing really well. Very proud of him. And, he's come a million miles, and got a few grey hairs.
I remember him from school, so I went to school with him.
And you remember that he was a troublemaker.
Oh yeah.
And,
very different now.
At 17, he was a bit wild, and he's got himself under control. Yeah, very mature now and responsible.
And do you find having a young fellow like him has made you a better trainer yourself?
100%. Well, in general, the best way to learn is to teach.
Yeah.
You get better every time you verbalise something or say it out loud, and sometimes giving someone else advice is the best advice you can give yourself. But it's easier to give it to someone else. But then when you give it to someone else, you say it out loud and you go, maybe I should take that on board as well. Maybe I should think about that too a little bit more.
And talking about when you seen that person in the park and you're persistent even though they didn't want your help. That story rings home with your own apprentice there, right?
Oh, with Pat? Because he didn't take, well, that's how he started with me. He was leaning on my car. I was picking up my kids from daycare, and he was outside leaning on my car. I told him, I came out to see this young fella leaning on my car who was a bit disrespectful.
Yep.
And I said, get off my car. And he said, you Bear? I said, I am. He said, I'm working for you. And I told him, no, you're not. It's my job here. And he didn't really take no for an answer. I told him I'm a one-man team. I don't do, I don't want trouble. I'm not looking for someone to get, it's going to be more chaos than good. It's going to take too long to teach you. I'm not interested. Go away. And he said, well, that's too bad because I'm working for you anyway. And he pretty much forced himself on me. I haven't regretted it though, taking him on. That's, I think that was a very good move. And we've had quite a few trainees on board since, and some of them have gone on their way on their own journey and started their own stuff as well. Had a few, a Brazilian guy and some other trainer as well. There's been a couple that have that trained with us for quite a while, a year or two, and they've opened up their own businesses now, and they're doing really well. And it's really nice to see that as well, to see other people growing and expanding and evolving. And I like that they're teaching my system.
Yeah.
And
are they still bouncing ideas off you?
Occasionally.
Yeah.
I don't need it.
We know you do.
Frequently. I said, frequently.
Well, who's that?
Myself, mate.
You weren't my trainee.
No. I still take a lot away from you.
You were quite qualified in your own rights when I met you.
I still learn plenty from you, and I'm thankful for it every day.
I've learned a lot from you as well. We all learn from each other,
Definitely.
And speaking of, how did you find yourself evolving? Because you obviously had to evolve. Let's some of the people we deal with are
even now,
different
every
now.
day, all the time, till the day I dropped in.
But from the pet owners back to the military style, how did you have to change within yourself?
Oh, it was really hard. My attitude, actually, when I first started training, and my wife will testify to this because she was one of my first clients.
Never mix business with pleasure, they say, right?
We started dating after. I didn't see her for a good year.
Yeah.
And then I bumped into her actually in the street, and that's how we kind of rekindled our relationship. But our first relationship was strictly business, and one of the things she said she actually loved about me was that that I didn't flirt with her at all.
Yeah.
And I didn't give any kind of intention other than Dog Show said you were super strict actually, so I'm a little bit scared of you. said you were way too, militant about it. And that was my style when I first came. Very rigid, very militant. I'd have my clients train a park bench before I ever let them touch their dog with a lead.
Yeah.
And I made them do all the moves on on a pole or on a bench, you know, and didn't let them train their dog at all. I trained their dog and didn't let them touch it.
Yeah.
And then I'd make them march up and down with their dog, straighten your back up, puff your chest up, you know. And I was quite strict about it. And my method now is just, it's like I'm a different person.
Yeah.
Even and the whole method, I feel like I'm a different person to the person that I came back here as. I was very serious.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And how about your relationship with dogs? How did that change?
Well, with the dogs, I feel I've definitely I soften up all the time. The more time goes by, the more tolerant. I mean, I was.
Mate, I've never seen anyone have a dog fall in love with them as quickly as you. Right, so you've changed something. Right?
No, well, even then, like even when I used to train dogs, there was a running joke in the kennels there, and they said, "Don't let Bear touch the dogs; he'll make them more neurotic." You know, they make him. But that was, I don't know. I've always connected with them. Even as a kid, I connected with animals. I'm always getting, you know, learning more and being able to observe more and realizing more and more things with the dogs as time goes by, as you do. And definitely, I'm sure my connection with the dogs has improved as the years go by. But I've always had a love before structure. I always had that, you know, some sort of a need to connect, you know, with an animal, almost like a, a strong need to kind of get in their head, you know, and kind of build rapport and it's it gets better all the time. But not only dogs, I like it. For me, it's a challenge trying to connect with anything, even chickens and geese.
Geese, I know the geese.
Yeah.
Did you know that geese are racist, Laura?
No.
100% have witnessed this myself. Do you want to explain it, Ben?
My grey geese.
Your great geese in Game Wars.
Actually, no, I have seen
Proper
them.
turf
Yes,
wars.
yes.
Right? Yeah. And even the white geese.
I think
with
you're
a
talking about
little-
racist towards people.
No, racist
Not
amongst
equal.
themselves.
Yeah.
But even the white geese with a little bit of grey couldn't hang out with the white geese. The
Yeah.
white geese would bash them, right? And they could only hang out with the black geese, with the grey geese.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. But there was one white goose that was part of the greys.
Correct.
He was part of the grey team.
Yeah.
Right. And he fought the whites. Yeah. But now we don't have them anymore. We only have the greys now.
Only the greys now.
Got rid of all the
Got
whites.
too noisy. The whites are too racist. But you would never believe it. Like,
Yeah.
it's I've spent a lot of time with Bear and
100%. If you introduced new grey geese, the greys would accept them straight away. Same as the whites accept white. But if you take a grey in, they'll go, nah, that one's
Isn't that
And
unbelievable?
we did it over, numerous times. We bought, bought and sold geese, and they'd only accept their own kind. It's pretty interesting.
Do you find that with dogs?
No, not so much. But when people do say, I do get people tell me that about dogs. Some people tell me my dog's a racist. He doesn't like German Shepherd, or he doesn't like whatever.
Or other people's nationalities. We get that a fair bit here as well.
That can happen as well.
Yeah.
But really, more than anything,
So
it's not a racist thing that they don't like a race because of some sort of political agenda or whatever, but really because they've had a bad experience and they've just basically marked that whole breed. So let's say if a dog's had a bad experience with, let's say they haven't had a great deal of experience with German Shepherds. You might have, let's say you have a Staffy and it hasn't, or let's say a Kelpie and it hasn't seen any German Shepherds before, and then it met one German Shepherd and got monstered by it. After that, and then it hasn't had a great deal of experience with German Shepherds after that event. Then they go, well, that breed of dog is bad, right? And they, in their mind, they're not bad. They're fearful of them. They anticipate a potential negative outcome from a social encounter with that breed.
You've said that a couple of times. Flew off your tongue.
A million times. And they, and so they're now, anticipating a negative outcome and defaulting to a fight or flight state when they interact with them. Whereas if you have a dog that's had lots of interaction with German Shepherds and they've had one bad experience with German Shepherd, they're not likely to mark Shepherds as a threat. Yeah. Whereas, so it really depends. The same with people. If you have a dog that's had a bad experience, with a certain type of people, then they might but they haven't had a great deal of positive experience with, they haven't been socialised as much, then they could potentially market a certain type of people as well. And you might have dogs that were in an abusive home, or not in an abusive home, sorry, were in a home where the husband and wife maybe fought a lot, and the dog was the wife's dog, and they gravitate to the woman for security, and the husband might have been a bit of a mean bugger, didn't like dogs, and so the dog might decide that after that they don't like men, but they like women, right? Or they trust women and don't trust men because men have been an aggressor in their world. Or some dogs the other way around. They love men, don't like women because the woman didn't like them and didn't pay attention to them and didn't, and so they gravitate towards blokes instead of shields. But it really depends, on what their experiences are. But
we're all a product of our nature and nurture, right?
Oh, 100%. And nurture is, at the end of the day, nature, and nature is nurture.
Yeah.
Really, at the end of the day.
They're the same thing in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, nature adapts itself to nurture, and nurture adapts itself to nature. Evolution is about nurture, not about, because, environmental things are what changes creatures to evolve. Yeah. Right, which is nurture, changes nature to evolve. And nature changes as well to adapt to nurture. And really, at the end of the day, nurture is nature. Yeah.
And talking about like reactive to some degree, Donna Lindley's asked, what steps do you take for dogs that are reactive to other dogs?
Okay, so that's a good question. So usually when a dog is reactive, reactive, we'll discuss what that means, reactive first. So a dog's got two sides of their brain. They've got a reactive brain and a responsive brain. The reactive side of the brain's job is to independently assess their environment for themselves using their senses and drive their sight, smell, sound, touch, prior experiences. That side of the brain's job is made to protect them when they're away from their pack and on their own. So the dog's got one program made for inter-pack communication, which is the responsive side of the brain. That side its job is to follow, trust, and mimic, to synchronize, right? To follow, mimic, mirror the cues of another individual, to trust someone else's judgment. And the reactive side's job is to make decisions for themselves. So they shut down the responsive side, the inter-pack communication. They imagine in their mind at that moment, they are on their own. They found themselves away from the pack and they've got to deal with life by themselves, which is why they become hyper vigilant and they start to assess and overreact as well. Yeah. And so the responsive side, its job is to trust the cues of another individual. Now, when I've got a dog that displays aggression, so are we talking about aggression or flight? Well, we can talk about all of it. So there's four primary coping mechanisms in the reactive side of the brain that they use to deal with pressure. Fight, flight, avoidance, victim. Fight mode, confront the pressure, move towards it, try and create space by pushing and making the pressure move away, biting, snapping, growling, lunging, making themselves larger, mock charging, etc. Jaw popping. They'll threaten, and they'll also actually act and bite or nip or whatever it is. So they'll try and make pressure move away or control it in a way so it stops, so it changes shape and stops acting like an active threat. Flight mode is where they say, I'm uncomfortable, I'll move away. So that might be reversing, retreating, walking backwards, running in circular motions, casting in big wide arcs, or moving away from pressure, right? Avoidance is staying in the pressure zone, pretending like it's not happening, stiffening up, looking sideways, staring at the ground, looking away, ignoring vocal cues. And victim mode, lying down, rolling over, acting like a victim. Right? Now, I've said all this many times as well.
You always talk quick anyways. This isn't just different. So I love it.
Slow. I'm slowing down. Okay, I'm trying to pace myself. But my hyperactive nature doesn't allow me to. But doing my best. So the reactive. So fight, flight, avoidance, victim mode. Now, generally, when a dog is walked regularly, they're going to inevitably default to fight mode, where they if they're insecure. So the reason why a dog fights another dog or tries to fight another dog is because they're insecure, they're scared, they anticipate a negative outcome from a close encounter with another dog. Either breaking the ice with strangers, or if they're fighting another dog in their pack, then that's a different story. But generally, what we're talking about here is dogs meeting other dogs and going into fight mode. Now, the reason why a dog will default to fight mode inevitably after a period of time rather than using flight or avoidance or victim mode is because they're usually on a lead after one or two bad interactions. Their owners don't trust them, don't want grief, and so they'll put them on a piece of rope so they can control them. And basically, at this point, the dog will believe that they can't get away. After a number of encounters where they come into proximity with another dog, they try and move, they realise they're restrained, they feel pressure on the lead, whether it be a collar, a harness, or a leash over their foot, it makes no difference.
Yeah.
Right? They feel trapped and confined in some way, and they say, well, I can't get away, or I have to move towards the pressure, make it move away from me, so I'll go to fight mode in some way. At that point, the owners will move the dog away, the other people will move their dog away, etc. Pressure goes away, fight mode work, tick for fight mode, they'll keep doing it. Now, and this is why the dog will inevitably start to default to fight mode. And next time they see another dog, they'll say, well, why go to flight? Why go to avoidance, victim mode? May as well just go straight to fight. It worked last time.
Yeah.
I'll do that again. And each time they do it, it becomes more and more confirmed that this is a viable coping mechanism to deal with pressure. Move towards the pressure, make it move away. Now, all this fight mode, it comes from fixation first. So you'll notice that when if a dog is nervous of another dog, the first thing they'll do is stare. They'll look at the other dog and they'll lock onto the other dog, and they'll find it very difficult to walk away, or to look away.
Yeah.
And even when you walk them away, they'll still stare. They'll turn their head backwards and try and stare at the other dog. The reason why they're doing this is because they're afraid. A lot of people mistake this behavior for dominant behavior, and they say this dog is being dominant and that's why he's doing it. Now, really what they're doing is that they're afraid and they don't want to take their eyes off the target, the same way that if someone suddenly came over here and started going, and shooting a few gunshots in the air and running around with a machete, and we go, and we're all,
where'd he go? Where is he?
We're all looking for where is that bloke? We're all going to try and keep an eye out. We're going to stop this conversation. We won't be able to focus on this, and we'll default to a reactive state where we become hypervigilant and start to look for danger. And then we'll want to stare at it or keep a handle on where it is, so that we don't get caught with our pants down, basically. And so they don't want to get caught by surprise. And so they'll stare at it, and they're also making sure it's not coming closer. Now, because of this fixation is where the dog stares at something and finds it very difficult to look away. Because of this fixation, they say, well, I can't look away from it, because if I look away now, something bad might happen. If I can't look away, I can't walk away. And if I can't walk away, I need to move towards it, make it move away from me. And that's the belief that the dog has, which is why they go to fight mode. The way that I deal with this is the first thing I'll do, and generally what I find when a dog is walking on a lead and goes to fight mode, they're not following on a slack lead behind their owners as well. Yeah. And so now dogs don't have verbal communication. So the one who physically walk in front, they're the first to make contact with danger. And so if the dog is insecure, which means they anticipate a negative outcome from social encounters, and which is where they'll default to that fight or flight state. And insecurity can come from a couple of different places. Number one, bad experiences. They've had an interaction with another dog, they got into a fight, something bad happened, they got worried, now they're anticipating a negative outcome. Or they haven't had enough experience, haven't got enough data to be able to justify a definite positive outcome from social encounters because they haven't been socialized enough. And even a dog that has had bad experiences, if they've had a lot of socializing to override that bad experience, and they'll look at it as a percentage thing, and they'll go, well, I've had heaps of good experience. There was only that one bad experience. Maybe they're not out to get me, and they'll give the other dog the benefit of the doubt. Whereas if a dog hasn't had a great deal of positive experiences with other dogs, where they've had a positive experience isn't having a lolly while having a bad experience. Let's make that clear. Okay, eating treats while you're having a bad experience does not create a positive experience. Okay.
Yeah.
Food does not create positive experiences. Okay. Food is tasty. We all love food. But
last time I got chased by a bull, I was extremely hungry, right?
You were hungry.
I thought about food, but I was getting chased across the paddock.
100%.
Absolutely.
First thing you do is think about cheesecake.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. So, with a cherry, maybe. Positive experience for a dog is where they don't have to defend themselves and they have an experience and they don't have to defend themselves and nothing, they don't get taken advantage of. Nothing bad happens. No one compromises them.
Yeah.
That constitutes them as a positive experience. So the way that I'd address this would be the first thing I do is, and what I usually find is that the dog doesn't have a great recall, but if they do, it's a little bit optional. Even when the owners say they have a bomb-proof recall, I'll go, all right, let him go now. And they'll go, oh, he won't come back. There's a dog there. And I'll go, well, that's a good, that might be a good start to recall. But for me, recall means he comes even if the sky falls in around him. So recall's got to be practiced from different scenarios, including under pressure. So distance, distraction, potential threat, instinct, drive, where they come from a higher value, and prioritize you over their own intention at that point or over their instinct. or their fear. Now, the first thing I'd work on with the dog is teaching the dog how to follow before I even bring a dog out. I teach the dog first, well, before I follow, I teach the dog how to come when they're called. So the first thing I want is 2 eyes. I'll teach the dog to give me their eyes and come to me when they're called from a distance without a dog. And I might use a long line for that.
And when you say their eyes, you want them to look you in the eye or
Yes.
just at you?
I want them to look me in the eyes
Yep.
from a distance when they're coming towards me.
Yeah.
So if they're coming towards me and they're not looking at me, I won't let them catch me.
Yeah,
I'll
right.
run away again, and I won't let them terminate that command.
Yeah.
So until they give me their eyes. So if they come to me with their head down, I'll run away again and won't let them actually finish the command.
Yeah.
I'll go, no, do it again, do it again, do it again. Then they go, oh, what's wrong with this bloke?
Yeah.
And they'll look at me, and when they do, all right, you can catch me now.
Yeah.
And I'll give them love, and I can sit there, and I'll teach them. And that's how I start that process with them, is to give me their eyes. And once they realise that, we do it 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
They start to anticipate giving me their eyes at the end. They start to look at me when I first call them.
Yeah.
Because they go, well, I'm going to look at you anyway. You may as well see where you are now.
Yeah.
And if I see them not looking at me, then I'll set them up and run somewhere else. Because if they're coming to me and they've got their head down, I might run on an angle in a different direction. So then I set them up and I go, well, you weren't looking. You don't know where I am. You think I'm going to let you catch me? You got to actually catch me. Don't just kind of, gauge where I am and then run to me sniffing the ground.
Yeah.
You're not going to know where I am. You
Yeah.
got to keep those eyes on me. So I run away again. And I'll make sure that they look at me, and I won't let them accomplish that command until they've actually done it. And once they realise this, which doesn't take them very long, 1 or 2, 3 times, they start to look at me and come towards me. When they're doing that, I'm also feeding the lead in towards me. And this is how I teach them. A lot of people, when they're walking their dogs, they hold the dog back. So they put the lead behind the dog's head and they pull pressure backwards. And this is one of the biggest reasons why their dogs fight other dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So just quickly before we go into that, so just as a basic outline for how I would address it is, when a dog's using it in their mouth, they're trying to push. They're saying, I'm going to fight the other dog and make the other dog move away. And the reason why they're doing that is because they feel vulnerable and they feel trapped. And they don't believe that when they're in danger, they can move away from the threat. And so what I want to convince them of is that whenever they're uncomfortable, whenever they're feeling vulnerable, they can use their feet to get away from danger. They're not actually trapped. They're not vulnerable. They can control the situation, and instead of trying to control the other dog and make the other dog move, they can control their own body and move away. And the way I'll do that is I'll practice recall off another dog, and I'll set up a mock scenario with another dog, and I'll bring another dog out, and the owners will tell me the dog's either nervous of little dogs or big dogs. Today I had a dog, the cattle dog mix that I had today. No problem with smaller dogs than him, but didn't like dogs, was scared of, intimidated by dogs larger than him.
Yeah.
The owner said to me, he's very dominant, he doesn't like larger dogs. And I said, well, that doesn't make any sense. If he was dominant, then he would try and dominate smaller dogs.
Yeah.
If he's fine with smaller dogs, he's not a bully, right? He's not trying to dominate. He's not trying to make himself bigger by making someone else smaller. He's having a go at dogs that he feels afraid intimidated by, right?
Yeah.
That's not dominant.
Yeah.
That's a dog that's insecure,
Yeah.
right? Now, he might be using a dominant app, a dominant program, a confrontational program, but dominance in itself just means ranking, status, job, position, or responsibility level. Dominating is a behavior that you do where you put someone else down to make yourself feel bigger, right? But for a dog to be dominant, you would. So I asked her today, so he's dominant. But dominance means status. So where is he dominant? Is he dominant with you when he's around you? Does he feel like he's got a big status? Or does he feel like he's got a big status around a smaller dog or a larger dog? Because his status is going to shift depending on who is around.
This crowd, yep.
Right? And so his status is completely related to its environmental, right? Just like with people. You might be around someone and you're like, that's right, I'm the best around here. And then you go where someone else is really amazing and you go, oh, I'm real small around here.
Yeah.
You're real big, and it depends on where you're around. But so basically I'd get them to walk away from pressure, and I want to convince them that when they're uncomfortable, they can use their feet and they can come back to me. And when I do that with them, I get them to break fixation. So the first thing I target is I want them to understand that they can turn their head and walk away and look at me when they're uncomfortable, which is why I start with my recall and then giving me 2 eyes. So I want to teach them the skills first, and then I want to stencil it on a situation with another dog. So the first thing I do is I practice my recall, and I want to teach them to come in towards me. Now I'm doing a number of different things. Number 1, I want 2 eyes. Number 2, I'm teaching them how to come into the rope. So usually the rope's behind the dog and the owners are holding him back, which is the usual case when the dog goes to fight mode. The dog sees another dog, advances forward, and the owner's behind the dog at that point with the rope in between. The pressure is now behind the dog because they're holding the dog back. And a lot of people at that point think, well, that should slow the dog down, but really it will tell the dog to go forward because the pressure's behind them.
it. Yeah.
Right. Same way the example I use a lot of times with people is that if someone was to grab you by the hoodie, you're walking and someone starts to pull back on you, would you jump backwards or would you pull forward to get rid of them? Right. Or if someone was facing you and they grab and you were facing each other and they grabbed you by the hand and tried to pull forward, would you pull your arm backwards away from them or would you give them your hand if you didn't like it? Right. Now, giving them your hand would give you release, right? Because you'd move it towards them, which means that it would take the pressure off, right? But why would you pull the hand back away then? Right? Because you're always going to go against the source of the pressure, right? And so if the pressure's behind the dog, you're really telling them to go forward because they're trying to get away from the source of the pressure, pushing them straight into whatever the potential threat is.
The other dog in this case.
Yeah, the dog, yeah. And which is the same way that you decoy train a dog. The way you attack train a dog is you hold them back so that they go forward, right? You create pressure and then you release it and they explode forward, right? And that's really what happens there. So one of the big things that I like to focus on...
It creates frustration as well, right?
100%.
Yep.
A lot of frustration. And that frustration will get redirected onto whatever they're not comfortable with. So the thing that they perceive as the biggest threat in that environment will end up as the as the release.
So which way should you pull that lead then?
Forward. But how do you get the lead forward if the dog's in front of you?
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't put a dog in that situation until you taught a dog how to follow you.
Yeah.
So the first thing I do with the dog is, and a lot of people say, but how do I get the dog out right now? Well, how do you drive a car when you don't know how to drive a car? How do you get from here to Timbuktu?
Yeah.
Well, you first have to learn to drive a
Google
car.
Maps.
Yeah.
Which we're going to get to, right?
How do you work on
your lead is your Google Maps.
Yeah, 100%.
Follow the lead, you find bear's eyes.
100%. Yeah. So that's right. So that's the first concept we work on is exactly that. Is there's this leash thing, and it's not something that holds you back. It's not a restraint. You're not trapped.
Yeah.
It's not something that makes you stuck, and you have to resist and fight against it in order to move. And so the first thing to do is put them on a long line and tell them, where do you want to go? You want to go? And this is the thing, a lot of people, they get their dog out on a short lead and start walking them into danger, or danger in the dog's eyes. Yeah. And they just keep them going, and they basically train the dog how to walk in a reactive state of mind. And so the thing that I work on is, first thing I want to teach them is there's this leash thing. It's not what you think it is. It's the opposite to what you've been taught to do. It's now something that you follow. It's in front of you. And so the way I do that is on a long line. And they also want to run. They want to go first. When you first get a dog out, they want to run. So instead of holding them on a short lead, making them frustrated, the first thing I'll do is I'll say, you want to go? We'll go and don't talk about it. Let them loose. They run. Now run over here. And I get them run to me. So they just have to go from A to B. Yeah. Now, all they need to do at that point, if I'm right next to them and I'm trying to get them to turn around, it's very hard because they can feel my presence. I'm right there next to them. And so they go, well, you're right there. I don't need to look at you. Yeah. But if they're at a distance 5, 6, 7 meters away and I let them loose and I call them back, then they go, well, where is he? I felt something on the lead. What's going on? And they turn around to look at me. And when they do, I'll run backwards and I'll tell them. So for me, the come command doesn't, I keep falling into something else, but the come command doesn't actually mean for me, come here. It means you can't catch me. It's competition. Right. And so the moment the dog hears the word come, I'm running. I'm running backwards though. Yeah. I'm not running away from them.
Just backwards.
Yeah. So I'm squaring up. I'm facing them and running. Because if I turn my back on them and let's say run north, then they'll think it's a competition who gets north first. Yeah. So
they'll just run past
me. So yeah, they'll run past me. So I face them and I run backwards and get them to come to me. Now, even if they do at that point run past me, which some dogs do, they go, yeah, I'm coming to you. Oh, see you, mate. Yeah. And they run past.
It's kind of like balancing sheep here, right?
Yeah.
Different to a young dog balancing up. Square to your shoulders.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And so then even if they do run past me at that point, what I do is I just turn back around, turn the opposite direction and run back the other way. Yeah. And I go, oh, you're going north, are you? Well, I'm going south. And I'll run the other way, still facing them because I'll turn around and still face them and run backwards again the other way. And then coax them to come towards me. And I'll do that a number of times until they go, oh, it's a lot of running. And I go, well, the only way we stop running is you got to catch me. Okay, you got to win the game. Right. And so then they figure it out and they start catching me at that point and they're coming into the lead. Now, as they're coming into the lead, I don't want them, as they're coming in towards me, I don't want them running over the top of the lead because I want this command to be the setup for the next command.
Yeah.
I want them to understand what the lead is, so that I could use that concept for the heel command.
Mhm.
And so once I understand how to come into that rope, because they've just gone from A to B, once they've turned their head around to look at me, their heads are now squaring, facing the lead, right? It's not behind them anymore. It's now in front of them, right? And so they turn in towards me. I'm at maybe 4 or 5 meters. They turn in towards me. Now they're looking at me and looking at the lead. Now, and I'm running backwards. I'm coaxing them. And as they come towards me, I'm going to reel the lead through the palm of my hand. So I'll put, let's say, my left hand up with my palm facing upwards, and I'll place the lead with my right hand into the palm of my hand, into my palm of my left hand, like almost like you're holding a gun.
Yeah.
And I'll place the lead in there. And then as the dog comes in and bridges the distance, I'll pull the lead through my hand and onto the ground. So I'll just pull it through and let it drop on the ground. And this way they're always seeing that lead in front of their face as they're coming towards me. And that's the concept I want to teach them first. Once I've got that, I'll start to work on my heel command. And the reason why I work on a heel command is because of what I said earlier, that dogs don't have verbal communication, and the one who physically, to them, positioning is everything. So if I'm walking with my dog and my dog's in front of me, he's cannon fodder. He's the first to make contact with danger, with things he likes, with things he doesn't like. And at that point, he's going to be the one to make decisions because he's the first to make contact. Now, in their world, the one who walks in front is the one who's the decision maker because they're the first to make contact with it. You never see a dog turn around behind him and go, so where we going? And the one at the back goes, yeah, just chuck it right when you hit the big gum tree over there.
Yeah.
They don't have that. The one in front, they're the decision maker. Now the only way that the way that they get that position is by competency. They'll outrun each other. Well, in a natural environment, it's a little bit different, but in a pack that we form, they'll compete, and there's a number of different reasons for how a dog takes a lead position. Obviously, age, and obviously the personality of the dog, and there's a lot of different variables and that come into play here. But if you see two dogs meet up, the first thing they do is they'll posture, and then they'll have a competition.
Yeah.
Who's faster?
Mm-hmm.
Who's a better wrestler? Right.
Yeah.
These are very important conversations for them, and so they'll establish this, and might have a number of different conversations over a number of days, even have a few trials. Have their own trials going, and they'll figure out who's who, and so the one in their world who walks in front is the one who's going to make decisions. So the first thing I want to do is I don't want to teach a dog, hey, walk away from danger, and he's still in the position where he feels that he's got to make decisions. So the first conversation I have with the dog is, when I call you, come to me, give me 2 eyes, and then I'll teach him how to heel. So once I've taught him how to come into that lead, I'll work on the heel command. I'll start to walk with them and teach them how to follow behind me. And that way I can also explain to them, obviously not verbally, but with action, that they don't have to make decisions about things. And it's much, much easier to convince a dog not to proactively take on things in their environment if they're in a position where I'm the first to make contact with it, which means I'm the one in danger, not them. Well, in their eyes, right? So I tell them, hey, you don't need to worry about it. I got this covered, right? I'm in front of you. You're following me. Now, some people have this idea that they'll teach a dog to heel by holding it on a tight lead behind them, and that is not a heel command. That is a dog on a tight lead behind you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Feeling trapped.
Yeah.
Right. But still, and you might be physically holding them behind you, but they're not following. And the whole thing about being a follower is that you follow.
Yeah.
Right.
You got to trust the person in front.
That's right. Yes, it's exactly about trust, and you can't gain trust by holding the dog directly behind you on a tight lead. So the first thing, so I'll teach them how to follow, and the way I do that is by first I teach them how to come into that rope so they understand the concept. Then I'll start to walk with the dog, and if they get in front of me, instead of applying pressure now backwards behind them, I'll do a 180 and about turn, a 180 degree turn, always in the same direction. I always turn away from the dog, so I'll turn to my right. Some people turn into the dog. I prefer to turn away from the dog for the first good few weeks, even month of training. If I've turned away from the dog, then they turn into me.
Yeah.
Right. If I turn into the dog, they turn out first, which means they're the first to turn. Right. So dogs on my left, I turn to my right, and that way they're always turning their head to the right, which means I'm getting them to turn their head constantly in towards me. Also, what it does is, because they're so used to that action of turning to the right again and again, it flexes them and makes their neck quite flexible on that right side.
So they
And
can
so-
look up at you.
So much easier. And the more
Yeah.
practice they get, and not only that, because I keep turning to the right, it becomes uncomfortable for them to turn to the left because the right side is so much softer. And so it convinces them, just even physically, they start to turn in a lot and look at me because that side has released because it's flexed.
Yeah.
And the left side isn't flexed as much, so it's a bit more rigid. And they're much more comfortable turning in and looking at me and giving me two eyes.
Yeah.
And so it even kind of their body almost convinces, their muscle memory convinces them to do it. But I work on a lot of that, always clockwise around me. So to begin with, obviously with a sheepdog, you'd want them to go in different directions. But with for obedience training, my first focus is working on stay on my left, turn to the right. And I'll get them turning that around. Now, because of that, also that same sequence, it becomes so much easier for them to, because they only have to go one direction, they don't have to think a lot about it, and they can get really good at it. And if the dog's already heeling with me and I turn to my right and they're staying behind me all the time, turning in towards them to the left, I don't have to cut them off, they're already behind me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to use that as a method to get them. If I turn to the left after a month or 2 weeks or 3 weeks of doing it, it'll happen automatically. I don't actually have to train them to do that because when I turn to the left, they're already behind me.
I'm looking at you for a guide already.
Yeah, they already know the concept, so it's just transferring to the left. But I'll work. So when they get in front of me, I'll do an about turn. I'll pivot away from them, and then I'll ask them. So basically, they say, "Where are we going, Bear? We're going north." And the moment they get in front of me, they're not trying to be rude. They're not trying to be disrespectful or anything. They're just asking questions. They just don't have words. So they'll go, who's leading the walk? Who's leading the pack? Who's making decisions? Who's deciding who's good, bad, a threat? What direction? What speed of travel? Who's got the weight of the world on them? You or me?
Yeah.
And the way they ask that question is they walk in front. And if I was thought I should be in the lead position and I was a dog, what would I do? Well, I'd take over them, right? But I wouldn't hold them back. So instead of holding them back, I'll do an about turn and head the opposite way because I can't outrun the dog and I don't want to. I'll say, did you think we'll go north, did you? No idea. South, right? And I'll do an about turn and start heading south. At that point, they're behind me now, right? Because I'm going the other way, right? So I'll tell them, hey, catch up, slow coach, we're going this way, right?
Yeah.
Now they start to catch up. I can now praise them that distance from where they're behind me to catch up to me because I've asked them to do something brand new. Whereas if I tried to hold them back and stop them, I wouldn't be able to praise them at that point because I've told them to stop doing something undesirable. Whereas here, I've set them up, right? They thought we're going north. Did you think we'll go? No idea. South.
Yeah.
I'll go the other way. And then they're going, oh, where's he going? Oh, he's going that way. Oh, better catch up. As they're doing that, good dog. I'm proud of you. Get them to catch up. Reward them for that. And then as they catch up, they go, are we going south? Should I take point? They get in front again. We're doing about turn again. Catch up, slow coach. He goes, where the hell is this guy going? After 3, 4, 5 turns, depending on the dog and how, what their tendency, how quick they switch onto it. But they all do in the end pretty quickly. Actually, if you've done your recall right, but the most important thing is doing a lot of that recall first. That's really important because that softens up the dog and gets their focus. Gets that connection with you. Then I've done this a few times. They go, every time I get in front of him, I find myself behind him, and he's telling me to catch up. And then when I'm catching up, he's proud of me. I don't know where he's going to go. I'm going to keep an eye on this bloke. And they start to slow down and look at me. And when they do that, I give them lots of reward. Sorry, I missed a step in there. Between my recall and my heel, once I understand the concept of that lead, I'll play a bit of a mind game with them. I'll start to walk, and I might be working them in the sun or wherever, and we'll have a shady spot for them to go to, and I'll keep giving them a bit of release to go in the shade for a bit of a break, and so that becomes almost their recovery spot, and so they'll keep gravitating towards it when they get a second, and so then I'll play a little bit of a mind game with them, and I'll start going, all right, I keep the lead completely slack, and as we start to gravitate towards, and we take a few steps towards the shade, they'll go, oh, shade, I know what we're doing. And they'll start moving towards it. As they do that, they take 2-3 steps away from me in front. They don't notice me anymore. I run backwards to the end of that lead and call them and make them come back to me. And then, good dog. And then we keep moving again. Do it again. Right. And then they go, this Bear bloke, every time I look away from him, I only take 2 steps away and then I'm running a full 4 or 5 meters.
Yeah.
How's he doing that? I'm going to keep an eye on him. And they start looking at me and they start keeping an eye on me and going, oh, he's going to set me up. I'm going to look at him. And they start looking at me and then I'm rewarding them. Good dog, I'm proud of you. They're going, oh, he likes that. Oh, I'll keep looking at him. And they keep doing that. And they're looking at me not only because I'm rewarding them, but also because they they're worried I'm going to make them run. I'm going
Yeah.
to set them up. They go, every time I look away, I take 2 steps forward. I'm doing a lot more running than I actually walked away. Now, if they walked all the way to the end of that lead and then I called them back and then they walked to the end of the lead and called them back, they do it all day long. But if they don't know when I'm going to call them and they take 2 steps and suddenly I call them, they want to keep an eye on me.
Yeah.
Now.
So you're really just making them use their brain and think about
100%.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and to get them to think about me.
Yeah.
Right? Now, the reason why I wanted to think about me is not because I'm needy like that and need the dog to think about me, but for their sake. See, I'm not teaching them to do something that they wouldn't do in nature. See, the whole way a wolf pack works, so how do they work? How can they all synchronize with each other perfectly? How can we get a dog chucking on a lead and wants to run away? Right? And they keep trying to pull away from us, whereas a wolf pack goes in the bush, no leads, no nothing. They synchronize, they mirror each other perfectly, you know, and they don't go to any dog training school.
Yeah.
How do they do that? So they learn how to do that. They all go through a system that's quite similar to what we do there, and they learn by lack of choice. And not only do wolves go through it, but we also go through that the same way.
Yeah.
And we learn to prioritize our pack over our environment. So the pups, they start out with will get distracted by everything first, and they're young, they're born and raised in the den area. Mum starts to get a bit hungry. She needs to join the pack on the hunt. She leaves the pups there old enough to stay in the den area for a period of time by themselves, and she'll join the pack on the hunt, run out. Little pups, they learn to find, follow, and prioritize mum. So they find mum first for milk, fall asleep, milk drunk. Then they start following her around everywhere, annoying her, and and then they start to chase her everywhere and obsess over her, and then she becomes everything, food, love, shelter, jungle gym, everything.
Valuable.
Yeah, and she's just everything to them, right? Yeah. And they just idolize her and hang off her, and she's starting to get annoyed by it and trying to run away from them. And you'll see it even with domestic dogs. They're like, I've had enough, I need to get away, and she tries to run away. Now, at that point in the pack, the pups would be running out of the den area and trying to catch mum, and then they'd get left behind, and she'd leave them, and they'd go back. They might only be 20 meters out of the den area, and they'll run back and hide in the den where they've been born and raised. The next day, they get out a bit further, and as they're getting bigger and stronger, they're able to keep up a little bit further each time. And they're learning a number of different real important things. Yeah. Number one, they're learning navigational skills. They're learning how to navigate their way back, just from very close to the den and slowly further and further away, learning how to navigate their way back and use their nose and their ears, their eyes, and recognize their environment and find their way back to the safety of the den. Number two, they're learning how to ignore their environment. So as they're getting bigger and stronger, they're able to keep up further and further each time. And there's a bit of a pack mentality that kicks in with the pups, where they compete with each other to try and catch up to there they are, there's mum, catch her. Right, and they will try and chase and catch her together, and then they get, left behind, go back and hide in the den. As they're getting stronger, they're able to keep up a bit further each time. And the further they get, the harder it is to get back to the den, the more important it is to try and stay with the pack. By the time they're about 6, 7, 8 months old, it's very difficult for them to get back to the den at that point. And they're lagging behind the pack and in a point of desperation, because they're going, if we lose them, we're dead. Yeah. Right? And so they've got to stay with the pack, and they can see him. And they're learning a few different things. Number one, take your senses. It's not enough just to ignore the environment and not get distracted. But you've actually got to take those senses and lock them onto the pack just to keep up, just to survive. And another thing they're learning is, because of that, they're able to see, because they're at the back, they're able to observe how the pack are actually working, and they can learn how the pack behave, because they're behind and they're the ones who are lagging, they're watching and trying to keep up. Then they can start to compete with the back members, right? And they can earn their way to the front by competency. Yeah. Right? Now, by this point, they've learned, ignore that reactive brain that independently assesses their environment, lock onto the pack. The only one that makes decisions and independently assesses is the one in front. Everyone else mirror and compete with the front member, right? And that's how they learn. And they learn to prioritize their pack over their independent assessment of their environment. Yeah. That's one of the most important things they can learn. That's how they become a pack animal in our world. We take them from when they're 2 months old, we stick them on a piece of rope, and we do the opposite. We tell them, hey, you see this piece of rope? You feel it? That's me. Can't get lost even if you tried. Yeah. And so they learn, can't get lost. Don't need to look at the pack. Don't need to think about anything. Can just do whatever we like, and they start. Now, the only thing that the responsive brain, which is the one that's job is to follow, trust, and mimic, to synchronize, the only way that turns on, the only way the reactive brain turns off, is by the responsive brain turning on. So those sensors are going to go somewhere. They're either going to go on their environment, which is what the reactive brain is, or they're going to go on the pack, which is what the responsive brain is. So they're not doing anything different other than putting them on something else. So either putting them on an individual, on a pack, or on the environment. And so when we raise a dog, we tend to go, well, I want to get him real comfortable with everything, and I want him to smell everything, and I want him to, and so we put him on a rope and they feel us, and they go, well, I can't get lost if I tried, so what am I going to do with these senses? I'll independently assess the environment, I'll look at this, sniff that, whatever, and then we basically educate them to become reactive. Something that I always recommend with puppy owners, people, I don't train puppies for people in general, not because it, I don't know, I just like it. It's a bit boring. Trying to find a way out of that, but I don't get me wrong. I love educating my own pups and raising them and giving them exposure and socialising them and everything. I just don't like to do it as a career because there's a lot more interesting things I can do. It's pretty boring raising first-time dog puppies. Whatever. So teaching them about taking the dog out for a wee and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Rather a dog try and bite me, to be honest. But we, so one of the things that I really recommend to puppy owners, other than obviously socialising the hell out of them, or getting heaps of strangers, people to pat them, even dogs that they want them to be independent later on, bomb-proof them first, fortify them, make them feel concrete, feel strong within themselves, and then you can teach them with education not to gravitate to people, and they'll be much more likely to do that, like we talked about earlier today. They're much more likely to respond to that if they don't have a lacking in that area, rather than if they have a lacking, then they've got this constant unknown. I just want to experiment, test it out. I want to meet. But
do you put an age on that as to when you can then say, okay, but now you're not allowed to interact with that person?
Yeah, so well, I guess depends on for what type of purpose you're looking for.
Yeah.
So if I guess once a dog starts to actively get into training, you'd start to slowly discourage it.
Yeah.
Not to highlight it, but to just start with calling them back over here and discuss with the people around you. Yeah. Not to, to
don't pat my dog.
Yeah. Don't pat my dog.
Yeah.
Leave it alone. Yeah. And then obviously starting to teach the dog as well. There's lots of different ways that you can do that. By even just using other people as a decoy for, letting the dog go to them, and just as he's about to go to them, call them back, and playing little games like that. And they'll go, I don't want to go to him. You just set me up.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And then when they come to you, good dog. Hey, go say good day. Call them over.
Yeah.
And especially teaching someone to call the dog and teaching the dog not to respond to that is one of the big things that will really just unravel that need for socializing with other people pretty easily, just by doing a bit of a practice training with them, and it's all fun and there's no bad feeling about it. And it's just, you just tell them, hey, people, it's like when you take a horse and the horse keeps gravitating, you put him in a round yard and he goes towards the gate, and there's people at the gate, let's say, and they were hanging out at the gate, and the horse goes over there for security. What would you do at that point?
Yeah.
Make him work on that area and then give him release on the other area, right? Yeah. So when he goes past that point, you put pressure on him and go, hey, run. When you see people, you run.
Yeah.
And on the other side, release.
Yeah.
Right? And then so it's kind of like kind of an idea like that you'd use. For them, you just basically incorporate people into your training scenarios, and the dog will start proactively going, I don't really want to go to people. People will work.
Yeah.
Right. And I'll start to avoid it. But so I'll start with my obedience with them and teach them how to. And then once I've got that, we'll go back to the dog reactivity thing, because I really was starting to answer that, but got lost somewhere else.
No, but it goes to show that you don't just look at the dog reactivity and let's solve that. There's a whole program in place
100%.
To start to educate from the get-go.
Yeah.
To be able to build the trust in the dog, not just go, let's fight fire with fire. You're going to go up, I'm going to go up.
Yeah, well, a lot of people, I see they try and punish a dog for being reactive to other dogs, and the fact that the dog is being reactive is because he feels vulnerable around other dogs.
And you're telling him it should be, but
and you're telling him,
scared.
You're punishing him for being afraid. But what happens then is that you both become the enemy. So he starts to lose trust with the person around other dogs, and he says, when I can't win.
Yeah.
Right. He just feels like he's just got no win in sight, and so usually at that point they'll start using avoidance, or they'll pair fight and avoidance up together, and they'll go to fight mode and shut down at the same time, and won't be receptive to communication at that point. But what I really work on is teaching them that they are, basically I convince them by using my long line. I'll set up a mock scenario, put a dog out, a decoy dog that is already trained by one of our dogs that is bomb proof and won't react negatively back to the other dog to begin with. And I'll use them and I'll let the dog run almost to within like
Close enough.
very close, almost touching.
Yeah.
And then I'll call them back right at that last second. And because I've already put in a foundation with that recall and I trust it, I'll get them to, and I will, before I actually get them right in, I might call them a few times from halfway just to make sure that that we're all on the same page. And then we'll come in close, let them go, call them back, and get them to break focus from right close to the other dog, get them to turn their head right around and come back to me. Once I've turned around from close proximity to the other dog 2 or 3 times and they've come back to me and they haven't been compromised in the process, the other dog hasn't hurt them, they go, wait a minute, I've just turned my back on the other dog completely, turned my head around, walked away, broke fixation, and nothing bad happened. You're joking. And as they're coming to me, good dog, I'm so proud, to give them lots of love. And I'm telling them, when you're uncomfortable, you give me your 2 eyes and you run to me and I'll protect, nothing bad will happen, right? You can use your feet. You're in control of your body. You're not trapped. Move. And that's why I'll always stand a bit of a distance away from them when I'm first interacting with another dog. I won't stand on top of them.
Yeah.
I'll stand away because I'll give them where to go.
Yeah.
I'll give them a place to go to come. You see you're uncomfortable? I can also see the big picture. And I'll say, you see you're uncomfortable? Come out of the picture. Come to me. Right? And they go, oh, you're joking. I can just move my feet and come. That's it. You're safe. You're in control. You can use your feet, not your mouth. They go, you're joking. Now, no dog that I've ever met will proactively choose to fight when they've got another option.
Yeah.
If they're fighting, it's because they don't believe they have another option.
Yeah.
Now, you might go, well, they had plenty of options. That's lovely that we say that, but it's about what they believe.
And,
right?
and that's no different with the people reactive dog, right? Teach them to move their feet.
100%. Yeah. And then
They feel have no other option. So
yeah, and with people as well. And then so then the next phase, that's right. So then there's a few phases to it. So the first phase is teaching them that when they're on a lead to be easygoing and to realise that they're safe in their own skin when they're having an interaction with another dog on a lead. Once I've got that going and I've done my recall, then we'll do what we call drive-bys. Okay, they're not like the Mount Druitt type drive-bys. they're Beniza drive-bys. Okay? And they're basically dogs walking past each other. So we'll walk past each other and we'll have the dog stay and heel, and we'll now teach a dog that once we've broken the fixation and he's not feeling completely vulnerable around that other dog who's turned his back on him a number of times and is feeling quite confident now, which is confidence is the dog's ability to anticipate a positive outcome. And that happens only through experience, where the dog has controlled the situation in a different way and nothing bad's happened. And so once I've built a bit of confidence, then I'll go, all right, let's move on to the next phase, which is coming at each other. So now the decoy dog's active now, is not sitting,
in neutral position.
There, just dormant.
Statue.
Yeah, and he's now moving. So now he's an active threat potentially because we come at each other. And because I've worked on a heel command where I've taught that dog how to follow me, and I've now broken the fixation and taught him he can turn his back, nothing bad's going to happen. We cruise past each other a number of times. And what I'll do is if the dog starts to stare at the other dog as we're walking past, I speed up with my body and I tell the dog to move forward past the other dog, like defensive driving basically. So I'll tell the dog
hit the gas, not the brakes.
Yeah. I'll tell him, see how you're nervous as we're cruising parallel to this other dog? Speed up.
Yeah.
Don't move at the dog. Speed up and cruise past it.
Don't be scared of the dark.
Yeah.
And those sticky feet.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Move your feet. You're in control. And they'll go, you're joking, so I can just speed up a bit and then we cruise past. That's it. And they start, and we'll do that numerous times, and we might bring out a number of different dogs. And once he's real comfortable, I might then go and depending on the dog's level of reactivity, if he's at a level where I think that he's not too bad and he's just had a bit of nerves due to lack of experience or whatever, I might then get him to break the ice with another dog. So I'll bring a dog out and I'll get him to I'll walk behind the other dog, and I'll get the dog that I'm walking, the decoy dog, to walk in front, and I'll get the new dog to sniff the decoy dog's butt.
Yeah.
Right, not face to face. Right, so that he can get some information about the other dog without feeling threatened by the other dog's face. And I'll let him have a sniff, and then I'll call him off. And then we'll do that a few times. I'll tell him, now when you make contact, you can make physical contact and disconnect. And so that way I can practice my obedience and my recall of physical contact with the other dog when he's actually made contact. And then from there, I'll get him coming cruising past and maybe going face to face and doing a few of that. And with the people thing, it's a little bit more complicated because I'd first do all that foundation, like you said, and then I've got to get the people patting the dog, because for a dog to be confident around people, they have to have the dog has to have its physical touch. That's a real thing with the dog. So let's say cattle dogs or different breeds like that, they're a bit head shy and they don't like it when you pat them and then take your hand off the front of their head. They go to lunge generally at that point and try and give you a nick. And so I'll work with the people on being able to transfer the dog to someone safely. So we'll teach the dog how to get a pat from a stranger side on. So he'll be sitting on your side, so you can pat him over the top of his head and the hand can glide off the back of the head rather than come off the front, right? So if you're facing the dog and you pat him, then your hand comes off the front.
Yeah.
But if the dog's on the side of you, then when you pat him, you can drop your hand down to the side of you and pat him off the top of his head and come off the back of his head, right? And that way it's not coming, in front and
invasive.
And so that's what I'll start with, teaching him first lead work, so that is transferable, and then I'll transfer him to different people. Once he yields and follows a lead blindly, then I'll be able to transfer him to different people to handle that lead. And if he's following them and they get him to sit on their side, very unlikely for him to have a crack at him. And
more people giving the same message, right? Consistent message on that lead.
That's right. And then I can get people patting. From there I can have different people pat him. So it's just we've got to have a way to be able to transfer. To get someone to make contact with him without negative experience.
And say that dog had never had any problems and didn't need all that. Do you think there's a universal way to introduce yourself to a dog, like through a pat? Maybe not universal, but what is, like, say you walk up to a dog,
a polite way.
A polite way to introduce yourself. Yeah.
Well, the politest way to introduce yourself to a dog is to leave him alone.
Yeah.
And let him try and figure you out without putting pressure on them.
So we should have just been running up to random dogs and just patting them in the face.
So if the best way to make a dog friendly with you, actually it varies because there have been numerous dogs that I've met that have been the opposite to that rule, but that's the general rule. If a dog's unsure, if a dog's confident, just go up and say g'day.
Yeah.
So if a dog is, you'll see it as you come up. They'll look at you, they'll wag their tail.
Yeah.
They'll have a happy look in their face, and they'll go and they'll be loose in the face, and you'll go, all right, he's friendly, right? And you'll obviously discuss with their owners, obviously, but but if you're pretty savvy, you don't need to ask their owners. You'll be able to have a look and see. Obviously, it's the right thing, culturally, culturally
to ask,
but I don't need to talk about that on this forum, I guess, but it's not really that type. But you'd be able to see your dog's friend. But if a dog does look unsure, then your best bet is to not to square up with them, but to let them figure you out, and then once they've had a sniff and interaction with you, let them come to the table. Then have your interaction with them. But I've met some dogs that were nervous until you interacted with them. Yeah. So you'd have to. They were a bit unsure. Quite a few dogs, that were the opposite of that rule, and they were real friendly. Yeah. But they were nervous until you said hello and patted them. And they're like, sweet. But that's usually a dog that's had the habit of doing that because their owners go, they promote it constantly.
Well, how often do you see like a bigger dog and they always say, "I'll give him a pat and he'll be right." Like,
that's right, 100%. And that's really where that rule happens. Is the rule that the owners create for the dog. Yeah. Right? They say, you've got to pat him, but he gets offended if you don't pat him. Yeah. He'll get upset if you don't pat him. And they make this decision and they basically convince people or kind of under the threat of the dog being unhappy, to tick this box. And, if you create a need, you're going to have to fill it. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a question here from John Starr. He's asked, are there specific breeds that have more suspicious behavior on the reactive side of them, or is it more an individual animal thing or line of breed? Like when old drovers would choose specific dogs or breeds, to breed the cattle dog that would look after things around the camp because of their protective side.
Yeah, so definitely every breed.
Natalie put that chair together, so if that falls apart,
it didn't. It was me falling apart on the chair. Definitely.
Love you, Nat.
It wasn't your fault, Nat. Okay, it was me. I actually just lean backwards and wedge my foot under it, and I'm not wearing shoes here.
Ouch.
So that's what I was trying to get out from it. I was like, I've got to lean back to get my foot out, but I'm right up against the wall here. It's stuck. So definitely every breed's different, and some breeds are more suspicious than others. Like cattle dog is a good example of that. Cattle
Your
dog,
sausage dog?
yeah, they can be as well. Definitely breeding has a place in this. So in general, definitely certain breeds are more reactive than others. Cattle dogs are suspicious of strangers. They love their owners, love their family, super loyal, but they start to shut their friends list off at about 9-10 months. They're generally quite receptive, and open to people until about 6, 7, 8 months, and then they start to kind of decrease, and they go, all right, well, we love everyone, and then okay, we love the regulars, but anyone new, we're not too sure about them. And then they go, well, you know what? We only love the close family and maybe some extended family. And then, okay, we only love the close family now.
Yeah.
And then they basically, everyone else they slowly kind of shrink their friends list down to the people who are in immediate contact with the dog or who have imprinted the dog when they were young. But then again, also, and then obviously you've got other breeds, certain mastiffs or different breeds that are bred for specific purposes, Dobermans, other breeds that can be a little bit suspicious of strangers, Anatolian shepherds, livestock guardian breeds, lots of different breeds that are a bit nervous. And then again, you've got in each breed, you got the breeding, right? So you might have, so if you breed a dog that's, you might have a Labrador, that's considered to be quite a passive breed, or a Golden Retriever that you get aggressive dog after aggressive dog, in that bloodline. So they obviously breeders of those types of dogs tend to cull those dogs from the breeding.
I was going to say that's just responsible breeding, isn't it?
Yeah. But then again, you get, discrepancies, and you get in a bloodline, you might have a certain bloodline of, that are more reactive. For years, a while ago, I heard chocolate Labradors. Chocolate Labradors are crazy, right? That's what I heard. Years and years. I've tried heaps of them. I don't really find that, but I think that is just chocolate Labrador owners mainly give their dogs an excuse. But it's a chocolate lab. That's why we don't need to train it. It's already crazy. Right? So that, but a lot of times I find also that people have a certain idea about a breed being a certain way, and because of that, they don't see even a cattle dog that's naturally nervous of people, of strangers. They and other dogs as well can be, depending if you socialise them or not.
Yep.
They can be pretty forward moving, and also certain breeds of dog are more inclined to default to a reactive state if they're a breed that is been bred to make things move. So if you have, a breed like a cattle dog that doesn't yield to pressure, they do yield to training, obviously, but they've been bred for that many generations that when something stands their ground with them, a big, massive animal, a cow or bull stands their ground with them, they don't back down. They're supposed to fight it and make the other creature move.
Yeah, that's it. Create that space. That's my space. You move.
Yeah. They're not trained to you. They're trained to respond to a handler, an owner, but not to someone, an outsider.
Yeah.
Right. They're trained to move into it. So definitely certain breeds that have been bred specifically, to make things move, or to guard or whatever it is, livestock guardians, etc., are going to be much more inclined to be aggressive than other dogs. That's why you'll find a lot of people who, whenever I get a cattle dog. Generally I'll go, g'day, get the phone call, and they go, hi, I have a cattle dog and I really, really need training. And I go, where do you live? Have you got cows?
Yeah.
Now, 99% of the time, the answer is no.
Yeah.
People who have cattle, I find they use more Kelpies and Border Collies a lot, or Coolies. Not I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of people who still use cattle dogs, but a lot of these people, the people that I tend to get with cattle dogs, they live in the city.
Yeah.
And they have a cattle dog. And my next question is, so how many people has he bitten? Or how many people has he had a crack at? Yes, how did you know? And that's generally the thing that happens when I get, I get a cattle dog and I'll know, and they've got a breed that they know nothing about usually.
Yeah.
They don't understand the dog on stock. If you had a stockman who worked cattle and or sheep or whatever, and he's raised cattle dogs and whatever, and then he's moved to suburbia, he's gone and moved into town or whatever, and he's got a cattle dog, you'll never hear a person like that ever call a dog trainer because they understand the breed.
Yeah.
But you'll get someone who kind of lives in Bondi and they're a first time dog owner, and they will go, so we've got this dog, we love cattle dogs, and we got this dog, and she's been lovely, but now she's changed, right? And she is, and with a dog like that, you could technically raise them to be social and docile, but you have to put in
a lot more effort.
Yeah, so much more effort to socialize them, than another dog that has an inherent trait, they're passive naturally, whereas they're naturally territorial, they don't trust strangers, they want to make things move, they...
While we're on that as well, what about those breeds that are normally passive, right? And let's not step on the white elephant, the COVID bubble, right? That people breeding for what dogs look like rather than the nature and temperament. How obviously that's a big part of your business these days as well, right?
Definitely. But people are breeding for looks because the people buying it are willing to pay money for looks, right? Rather than temperament. People
looks and colour.
Yeah, the breeders that I've spoken to, and I'm sure you guys would know yourselves in that same exact situation. People call you up and go, I want a Kelpie that looks like this and this, and or whatever.
Has to be red and tan, and the big female will have blue eyes.
Yeah. They've got some criteria that they about specifically. They won't say a word about working, and what their
what are the parents like?
Yeah, or the temperaments of their parents or something like that. The first thing is, have you got a black and tan?
Yeah.
Or have you got a red and tan? Or have you got a some sort of and so they'll definitely that's a big thing. But that's not to take away from breeders who are very
ethical.
Particular, and they will not compromise, and they won't fall into that temptation, get baited into that temptation of the, I can make another, $1,000 if it's a blue, or whatever, and they, which is, but definitely I'm getting, but more than anything, even at the end of the day, honestly, for me, I believe that any dog can get, obviously every breed of different traits and tendencies and whatever, but I don't care about the breeding. Well, I care about it, and I do, but and it definitely plays a massive part, with work ethic and everything else, and style of work, and all the rest of it. But for me, I feel very strongly that if you put the yards in with your dog and you train them, you'll get a good dog.
Yeah.
And so I don't give these people excuses, and I don't allow them to buy into, the breeder, it's a breeder thing. No, it's not. You raise the dog. You've had it since 2 months old. Sometimes I get phone calls all the time because we work with a lot of the rescues around, and so people call me and they'll go, so I've got a rescue dog and it's 2 years old and it's really aggressive to people, to dogs, whatever. And I'll go, and it doesn't listen to anything it's told, and the reason is because it's a rescue dog.
Yeah.
And I'll say, well, what age did you get the dog? 2 months old.
Yeah.
I don't know, rescue dog.
That's right.
You just got a puppy and you raised and you stuffed it.
Yeah.
Right? It's, obviously I don't say it like that.
Yeah.
You're gonna say it nicely, but but that's the deal.
Yeah.
You raised it, you were responsible for it. If I get some kid as a baby, a Russian kid, or a kid from Africa or from France or from somewhere, whatever, and I raise it, then
you can't go blaming his
you
nationality.
can't go, it's because he's French, it's it's German, so that.
Do you still think genetics do play a part in that? Like if you
100%, that influence, it's an influence.
It's always nature over nurture, but to some part, if you could raise the dog as well as you could, all of best, but if both parents bite people, there's a huge likelihood that
without the
dog is
right
going
guidance.
to, or do you not
no,
agree?
No, I don't agree.
Yeah.
I agree that definitely if both parents, and Dan and I have actually had this discussion about conditioning and what it does to genetics, potentially, if it does.
Yeah.
I believe that training and conditioning affects the DNA and creates a big change in the DNA. I believe that everything that you do alters your DNA.
Yeah.
And I believe every experience alters your DNA.
That's probably one of the only things we don't agree on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do believe,
especially, and let's generalize. We bring it down to stock dogs, right? At the end of the day, but
yeah. No, but that's fine.
Yeah.
But we stock dogs fine. I believe definitely that you can, and I understand completely where you're coming from, and I've seen in real life what you've done with a dog, where you've taken, where you've kind of fought the genetics. Let's say putting eye into a dog that's loose-eyed, when they look like a dog and naturally has eye, and you would not tell the difference, between them. And don't get me wrong, I understand, but even so, I still believe that dog obviously had that. How could it do it if it didn't have it in the DNA? You won't see a dog meowing. It's not in their DNA, right? You can only do what nature already has created for you, definitely. But then again, nature has potential. So if you have a dog that both parents bite, there's a higher percentage that the pups are going to be more aggressive and have certain tendencies. But then again, if you take that pup and you raise it and you socialize the hell out of it, and you'll be able to see it as a young dog. People tell me all the time, it was suddenly, and I go, no, it didn't. I've never met a dog that suddenly did anything in my life.
Yeah. And it was always gradual.
Yeah, and I tell them, you got that dog, and when it was little, I know it wasn't being aggressive, but it was timid, right? It was timid. It would shy away. It would back away. It would, we just thought it was reserved. We just thought it was a bit, a little bit snobby, right? And they've got these, and this behaviour started somewhere, and at that point, in the beginning process where it started to show those timid tendencies, if they would have combated, addressed it right then it would not be that way. Because I can tell you now, personally, I've raised heaps of dogs, and I've raised heaps of dogs that start off timid and nervous and look like they were,
hating the world,
and terrified of everything, and they're super confident now, arrogant even a little bit. They walk around there, g'day everyone, I'm amazing, and they would never bite. And that's a dog that I knew that if I left it the way it was and just raised it and let that behaviour fester, it would turn into an aggressive tendency once it got confidence. A lot of times these behaviours they develop like a bulb under the ground, and they'll slowly be developing.
They'll just fester.
Yeah, and then once the dog hits a level where they're actually confident about themselves, when they hit adulthood and they go, I think I can defend myself now, then it comes out as aggression or as some sort of a magnified tendency, where it's actively go, whoa, that's a problem, right? But they don't recognise that it was a problem until the dog does damage, or until they do something that's considered unacceptable. Yeah.
Throw a different spanner in that works.
Yeah.
What if that pup, let's say 6 to 12 months old, it's been allowed to get away with it, it's sort of started to fester. What happens then when you take that dog on at 12, 15 months old? Can you not stomp on it, but can you
stamp out?
Can you do that and get it to not pop up again, or do you think it'll pop up again?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So it really depends on quite a number of variables then. It depends on, is that dog going back to that same location where this behaviour was created?
Yeah.
Or is it going to a new place, or is it staying with me? Or is it, because that's the question. So if it was...
let's say it was staying with you.
If it was staying with me, I could stamp out that behaviour very quickly, and the way I'd stamp it out would be more, I'd take a multi-pronged approach to it. Number one, I'd build its self-esteem by giving it a sense of purpose, training it and teaching it stuff so that it feels good about itself. Number two, I'd work on different coping tools. So if the dog's, let's say, fearful and flighty, I'd work on the dog not running away, building confidence like that. If the dog was aggressive, I'd teach it to move away, and then teach it not to move away. Once it knows it can move away, then I'd teach it that it doesn't have to move away and build the confidence that way. I'd also socialise the hell out of the dog
Yeah.
and get it around people and address those tendencies and flood it with those experiences. And then I can pretty much guarantee that it won't come back. As an example, Blue, my Kelpie, was 2.5 years old, got him from Campbelltown Pound. They called me and said they're going to put him down. They said he's nuts. He's aggressive. He bites people. He's got a crazy look in his eye. We don't trust him one bit.
Yeah.
And he is unrehomable. And I said, do you want to take him on? I said, no, not really. And they said, well, that's too bad. We're going to have to put him down. I said, no, wait a minute. I said, why are you putting him down? I said, well, we can't. He bites people. And I said, well, what if I get the bite out of him? I said, well, you keep him until you rehome him. And they said, yeah, if he's not biting, then we're happy to keep him until we get him home. And so I took him. I said, well, I'll come take him. I said, I'll pick him up for a week or two. I won't charge you anything. I'll train him and I'll give him back to you. And then, I don't know why I did that, but something tugged on my heartstring and I was like, all right, we're going to give him a chance. So I took him. Obviously now I've ended up keeping him, but I took him in and I've trained him and he came real good. And that dog would not hurt a fly down. You know the dog.
100%.
Would you?
I saw him the other weekend.
Yeah,
yeah.
The trial, yeah.
Yeah.
That
He
dog
placid as.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
But everything happens for a reason, right, mate? And here's your journey into your stock dog world, which we're going to touch on.
And
in
I
a
wouldn't
minute
give
there,
him
right?
away now for anything. But I do believe now if he goes back to another home, back to the original home, if they change their ways and take on board everything I've told them, and they comply and they really change, it's very hard for people. The fact that they created the dog like that tells you there's something in their way of life with the dog that's for that specific dog.
Yeah.
They might get along beautifully with a different breed or with a different dog, but for that dog,
it
not
wasn't
working. Yeah. And so they could now, if they are willing, and some people are, and it's pretty interesting. Some people do do that flip, and they completely, change their way of handling their dog, and they get amazing success, and that behavior disappears because, aggression is not a personality trait.
Yeah.
It's a symptom.
Yeah.
Right. It's an action that happens either due to genetics or due to bad experiences or due to a lack of experience and it's just a way of dealing with something. And you can, it's not because they're trying to eat another dog or a person, not hungry for them. It's out of fear. Right.
Yeah.
And so even when a dog bites sheep, they're doing it because they're scared. Unless you've trained them to do it, right? So if you start a dog on sheep and their first thing they do is they run in and start biting them, it's because they're scared. And what would you do to get them to stop with that behaviour if you wanted them to stop that behaviour? Generally, you'd put them in a small yard, right, and make them use their feet. Tell them run past the sheep.
Pretty true, yeah.
Sandwich them in between the sheep and the fence, and teach them how to give
them confidence.
That they're safe, right? And you say, look, see. Nothing bad's happening. Are they killing you? No. Do you need to try and bite them? No. Settle down. And very quickly the bite disappears, right? And it's the same kind of idea. They, aggression is not a personality trait as much as it is, a symptom of something else. And it definitely can get removed, with the right home, or sometimes even just removing them and putting them in a new home. And as long as those owners don't remind them of the past owners, pretty good to go.
Insanity's the definition, doing the same thing, expecting a different result, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Something's got to change.
And going back to the same environment would be the definition of insanity.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? Mate, we could sit here for absolute hours and talk about the behavioural stuff. Right? We're going to have to shift a bit. But I think what we've absolutely learned here is that there's no magic powder. There's no crocodile Dundee.
So interesting.
Absolutely. There's a lot of work and a lot of programming involved, right? And creating new happy humour, right? A new happy place.
Yeah. Not wrong. Yeah, 100%. That's it. It's a lot of, people walk away with a dog that's really well trained. But those people who come to my sessions see how much sweat pours off me to train to get in their dog's head and get their dog moving and following those instructions. You guys have seen me, in the field. I'm marching up and down. I don't stop the whole day, run up and down. Someone's got to run the kilometres with that dog and get it, get its, brain ticking. And, it's usually me doing the dirty work. And
And apart from the survival of your family, right? What do you get out of it? What's the gratification?
Oh, it's so much more than just paying bills. It's to me, it's my whole life. It's my world. It's something that it fuels me every day. I wake up in the morning, my brain just firing until the moment I go to bed. It's just ideas of what, new things that are coming. I live off it. It's it's like a drug to me. You know, and the more complicated and the more intense and the bigger the, you know, the better.
Yeah.
So
Very cool. We talked about Blue there, your introductory to stock dogs or into the stock dog world. What's this is obviously something that's you're really, really passionate about
I love
now.
it. Yeah, I'm not very good yet, but I'm at the start of my journey with it, and it's just a whole new world for me. And even just creating the correlations between my past work with protection, you know, I'm building a working dog up in that way, to seeing the correlation to building up a sheepdog and what it takes. And obviously, I've got that much left. Luckily, I've got a good friend Dan here to guide me. It's incredibly rewarding for me, especially since I can do it at home by myself. Got sheep at home, and you know that dog does all hell, mind you. You know, I pretty much walk outside with a handbag. You know, I think it's a dog, and the sheep will run to me from. You know, but to me, it's just I've got so much to learn, and that learning is so rewarding for me, you know, and getting the dogs moving, and you know, I've become obsessed with it a little bit, to be honest.
And not just at home on your dog's sheep, mate. You've got out and like actually experienced it in the field, right? Working on properties.
Yeah.
What is it about you, the dog, the stock? What's the special?
Well, just that working relationship, being able to, and I've missed that, having a dog with you that you work with and you rely on, and you trust them, and you do amazing things together, and you create product together as a team, and you grow together and evolve together, and building a dog, it's like building a building, you know. To me, it's you know, it takes a lot of effort and is incredibly rewarding, and all the yards and effort you put into it. I love every second being out there, not only with my own, with my sheep at home, but working and mustering and doing a bit of putting them through the yards. And my wife's got a family farm, Garima, and they run, the neighbour there runs thousands of sheep, and we go up and help him with rounding them up and shearing a bit and whatever.
Yeah, and you got your own shearing stand at home now?
I don't know if it's a shearing stand or a butchering stand.
You're knocking the wool off them still, right?
Yeah. Bit of wool, bit of skin. You know?
Yeah. So how do you go leaving? How am I going to word this? I don't mean to sound rude or anything, but how do you handle? Like, obviously, you love control on a dog. You love having those buttons on a dog and all the rest.
Yeah.
How do you go then letting a dog make its own choice on stock?
Yeah,
like leaving some of not the natural is probably not the right word, but leaving that in there,
like the command versus that's interesting. So when I first started working with the sheepdogs, lots of control, controlling the hell out of them. Move here, move over there, stop over here, come over here. And that was one of the biggest things that I've really learned a lot, especially of recent is. And you know, Dan's really helped me with that actually a lot. Is understanding. Well, obviously, I don't understand it completely, even close to yet. But trying to find that balance of being able to, and I have backed off a lot with the commander. Trying to, even the way I've trained a pup from the start. The first time I trained a pup was just all about controlling the hell out of them, and then now we're a lot more laid back about it and letting them. You know, as long as there's no, you know, dirty biting and, you know, or no, you know, getting too much out of control. Lots of letting them work their instinct and not trying to tell them to walk up on the sheep and look at them, but rather creating a circumstance where they do it automatically. You know, like I've found lots of different methods, which I've discovered. I bounce them off Dan all the time. I'm like, what do you think about, you know? So I found like using gateways and stuff to, once the dog knows they've got to push them through the gate. So to develop a bit of eye on you know, a bit of cover, you know, and things like that without teaching the dog, move around here, move around there. You've got to cover them and grabbing you know, or getting the sheep to try and break out, you know, so the dog can keep cover, stuff like that, rather than commanding them. Yeah, definitely.
And do you think that's then changed the way you look at like like a pet dog and some of the people that come to your sessions? Has that changed or not at all?
Not so much in that
Yeah.
regard, because their dogs are completely out
Yeah.
of control.
Yeah.
They need control
They
at
need-
that point.
yeah.
That's what I say all the time to our clients here. Go, I'm a bit of a hypocrite. I don't have that much control on my own. You think my dogs are highly trained, but they're actually not. They're just compliant.
But when you have a dog that molds to you and that you've taught them to mirror you, then you don't need to put that much control over them.
Correct.
Because they're too busy trying to do what you want anyway.
Yeah.
And that's what I said. Like we ask them for control here, but when we go in stock, I don't want all that control anymore.
Yeah.
But those basic principles of control are still the same.
But where I've also something that we've also really and the obedience and the training side has definitely helped me a lot with the sheep stuff. But maybe being my saving grace, that stopped the chaos. Like you said at the trial, the stop I have, the stop command or whatever like that, things like that. Really saved me.
Oh yeah, your brakes. You just
my wild dogs.
Yeah, but they're not the wild, mate. They work pretty well. But the drop. I could see smoke coming off their feet when he asked them to down on the other side as soon as they got around their sheep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was a lot of stockmen impressed with that too. Don't worry about that.
But the obedience side of things has helped me definitely, with the sheep stuff. But really, like you said, trying to find that balance and trying to back my practice off and control, and let them. But also with protection work, you're using a lot of instinct as well. So you start off with training them to work, but then once they've got a basic concept going, you want to let the instinct take over. You want to, if you're searching a paddock, let's say, if you're sending a dog under tree cover, let's say into a big, a paddock that's covered in tree cover, you can't send flares up, you can't see there's someone, there's someone out there that's up to no good. You need to send out to find a dog to find them. The way you train a dog to do that is not on. You train them to attack on command, but you then teach them how to scan, how to search a field, and that you teach them. They teach themselves. You create the circumstance, and they learn it by. Oh shit! I put my foot in it because I'm going to have. Do you want? Well, I'm basically saying something general, but I can go into detail about it. Otherwise, it just sounds. But it's a whole conversation. But basically, you teach them how to cast out to a sleeve and bite. Yeah. And then you'd set up mock scenarios where you show them the decoy, the person, and then they run out to the bush and hide, and the dog's got to find them.
So you're teaching them to hunt.
Teach them to hunt, and they've got to learn to use their nose because they've got to learn to hunt to find a scent trail on the wind. Mainly because you're going to send them, because a lot of the time when you're using dogs like that, you're sending them into the wind to find it, directly into the wind really, to find a scent, and you might come from a few different angles, where the wind's blowing either sideways or at you, and you'd be sending the dog into the wind, to the scent's blowing at you, and so you'll see them running and zigzagging first with their nose in the air once they figure it out, and then they beeline towards it. But a lot of that training is really them figuring it out rather than you create the circumstances, and obviously if they don't find the decoy, then he might run out and go, and create a lot of noise, and the dog goes, there he is, and find him, and after a few times like that, he'll start to go, okay, he is out there, and they start to trust that there is something out there, and they've got to try and find it, and then they start to kick their senses in, and they go off their instinct. There is quite a bit of instinct once you pass your basic stuff with the dog, the foundation with them. There is a lot of that, but because I've been doing obedience training and behavioural stuff, a lot of control for quite a few years now, it has been quite an adjustment to back off them, and and where that was really highlighted was not so much on my own property with my trainer sheep, but on a big property with thousands of runny sheep that have never made any contact with any dog or human, and they're terrified and feral, and until my dog go around that way, and he's just getting confused because he's got his own ideas and he thinks he knows, and he's probably better. Well, he did know better than I did, and I was trying to tell him to do something that he shouldn't be doing. I was like, no, go around that way. And he's like, no, they're all going there. Yeah, no, this way, and he was right. He was completely wrong. But I started to trust the dogs a lot more also in that way when they proved me. When I realised that my command was not working, it works on 40 sheep, but not on 2,000, right? And there's and I just basically cooked them in 2 days. Each day for the first, second day, just cooked them. They just got cooked in the head and couldn't think straight. They were too busy trying to listen to me, trying to figure out what they needed to do, and I realised I wasn't getting anywhere. And then I just kind of got what really happened out of a bit of frustration. I was just like, just do your thing then, and let them do their thing, and they performed beautifully. And I was like, okay. All right, do your thing. do your thing. Yeah. And it started to get a bit more kind of trust in, in that way as well. But it's a balance, I guess, because you got to know when they're doing it, instinctively and doing what you want them to do, and when to put that input in. And
And we mentioned there that about a trial the other day, and you have completed a couple of trials now.
Yeah, that's been quite enjoyable. Yeah.
Talk us through that. What's the? You got a bit of a hook there now, right?
Oh yeah. 100%.
And what's that about? What's hooked you, and what do you want to achieve?
I'm very competitive by nature, naturally, and I like to find things that I'm not very good at and improve at them, and especially things that I'm passionate about. And there's a few different attractions to the trials. Number one is the competition. Another thing is the people at the trials. They're all pretty, very knowledgeable and real nice people too. And it's I found a bit of a culture there, with I don't really know anyone. I've met a couple of people, got a few friendly faces that I've met so far, but you can see it's quite a camaraderie. It's people help each other out. It's not like people are trying to trash each other and put each other down, but they're all actually really boosting each other and helping each other grow. And even the tips, and even the tip from the judge, that was one of the most, something that was super helpful for me. And Dan kept calling that out to me and telling me, hey, turn and face that. And then the judge there, he was like, I don't know, when he said it, he was like, just turn that way. And I said, yes, and didn't really know what he was saying. And then the second time he said it hit home. I was like, oh, that's what you're saying. I get you now. And then I followed his instruction, and the sheet just went and just flowed. And I was like, oh, you're right.
I'll do that. I should have done that.
And then I've been practicing that at home as well, taking that on board. And but it's a very nice culture, and there's so much to grow, and also to see all the different people, and they've all got a different method. They've all got different ideas. I mean, it's interesting to see that they're all actually people, the regulars, I guess, analyse people and everything. Can't help it. But you can see the ones that are like mates and work together, because they have a similar mannerism about them, or the people that compete quite often, or have been doing it for years, or work together, they all kind of rub off on each other. And you can see kind of even the way that, that I hear you calling your dog, or you go, Mo, 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 and I hear other people with the same thing, not with their dog's name, and that, even the tone is similar, and it's pretty interesting how everyone rubs off on each other and everyone learns, but everyone's also got their own unique way of training, and it's real interesting and a lot to learn, to observing. I love learning, I drink data. I love it. To me, if I find someone who I can,
And what would you like to accomplish?
What would I like to accomplish?
And obviously we're talking about yard trialing at the moment.
Well, I would like to get a lot better at it, and to improve my skills for a number of different reasons. Number one, I want to be. Well, I like to do a good job, and I like to to perfect, and to try and for my own self as well. And also, it's a bit of a little competition for me in my head to see if I can, get up there, with the boys, and see if I can, make something of myself in that area. I've worked quite hard in my industry to build quite a good name for myself.
Well, you've got a wonderful reputation, mate, for what you do.
I'd like to, at some point, learn enough. That's not my aim. It's not the reputation. I don't care about that so much as I do care about just being a better dog handler, and in that area, and also one day soon, well, we want to run stock, so we've got 40 sheep, but that's just play sheep. I'd like to get into it for real with cattle, sheep, and that's my wife. My wife grew up on a cattle station as well, and her dream is just to live that lifestyle, and I do too. I'd love that, and for the kids as well, and so just if I learn stock better, and I can and it makes life easier for everyone, for stock, for the dogs, for myself, and and also the competitive side. That's definitely a big factor.
That's beautiful, man. Actually looking at doing it to better your family, right? And for what you want to do. And speaking of young fella, we don't have to ask about things rubbing down the family tree there, mate. Yeah. The young fella was at that trial the other day as well. And a lot of people have seen that on social media now. How proud of a moment was that for yourself, mate?
Oh, so proud of him. He was, and how scared he was before he went in. He was just absolutely terrified. We made an agreement. We shook on it the day before. He's 10.
Yeah.
And he loves driving everything. Cars, motorbikes, mowers, but anything that he can get in and drive, he wants to drive.
Yeah.
So he wanted to mow the paddocks and with the rider mower.
Yeah.
It's good, eh? Tell him, you want to mow the paddocks?
No, yeah, go for it.
You have to work for it. No, make him earn it so that he loves it, right? Yeah, you got to play with reverse psychology, right? So he said, I want to ride the rider mower. And I said, I don't want you bloody burning petrol for no reason.
Yeah.
Petrol's not cheap these days, and I don't want you just driving around doing burnouts in the paddock with a rider mower. You can, if you want to, I said, if you want to ride it, I said, you coming to the trial tomorrow? And he said, nah, I'm a bit nervous. I said, well, you can't ride the rider mower then.
Yeah.
I said, you can only ride the rider mower if you come to the trial tomorrow, right? So I'll let you burn as much fuel as you want on that mower as long as you come to that trial. And he
didn't mention about cutting natural grass.
Yeah. No, he did cut. Yeah.
Yeah, but you didn't say that. You didn't need a favour.
No, yeah. Oh, it's not a favour for me. Favour for me was him coming to the trial. But he ended up. So we shook on it, and then the next day he tried to bail on me, and he said, just as we were there, he was like, "No, I'm too scared. I'm not doing it." I said, "You're doing it. You're getting in there whether you like." We shook on it. You're doing it whether you like it or not. You're not bailing on me. You're not bailing on your word. So you're getting in there, you're doing it. And he was so scared, and he ended up confronting his fear and pushing past. And that was really, even the fact that he works, that he's got his dog and she's amazing with him, and he's got such an amazing relationship with her. And and I was super proud of that. And him opening those gates and closing them, and doing his best. And he did an amazing job. I was super proud of him, and I love the fact that he's passionate about it and wants to get into it, and he's got his own dog and he handles her and trains her every day, and and he loves it. But the fact that the biggest thing that made me proud was the fact that he confronted his fear, and that he was afraid to do it, and he did it anyway. Yeah. And after that, you should know, he's busting to come to another trial too.
That's awesome.
So he wants to get into this big time as well.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna grow together.
Yeah. So that's awesome.
That's good. And your copy pack definitely got some merit behind it there, and grown a lot over the last 12 months. So watch out for Finley. Got a couple of dogs coming through.
We'll get there. Don't want to talk too soon. Pride comes before fall.
Nah, you're doing great, mate. Really appreciate your time tonight. There's been that's cool. Yeah, mate. There's been a couple of questions there. Was there one that stood out to you there? One you answered in real depth. Yeah. And they were in a bag of Enduro, high-energy food with real kangaroo meat.
High-energy food for working dogs.
High-energy food for working dogs with real kangaroo meat. Yeah. I missed that little bit down there, didn't I?
Say it every week and you still can't get it right.
Oh, we will get there. Thank you, Enduro.
I can't remember what the questions were.
There was about the reactivity, the breeding, and the other one was breed. There was a couple of others we didn't get them because we were going so much depth about the ones we did.
I did like the question about the dog reactivity. Yeah. Yes, that was probably the one most excited about. But they were all great questions.
No, that was cool. That was Donna Linley. So we'll get in contact with Donna and get those details in the bag of Enduro off to her.
No worries. Bear, thanks heaps for getting on tonight, mate.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
No, really appreciate it. Thanks to all our listeners there tonight. Actually, fire away but you're not going to wait that easy, mate. There's still one more question.
Yeah. Would you rather fight one duck the size of a horse or 20 horses the size of ducks, and why?
Ooh, well, that's a good one duck the size of a horse.
Yeah.
Or 20
Horses
the
the
size
size
of
of ducks.
Would I rather fight them?
Yeah.
You'll take them on. Which one are you taking? The 20 or the 1?
Ooh, I'd take the. Oh, well, it depends on their tendencies.
Yeah.
Is it gonna act like a massive duck, or is it gonna act like a because ducks aren't really that scary.
Yeah.
It's kind of a
I don't
big
know
duck,
about
I don't know. I mean, throw a rope around its head.
Yeah.
Trying to control its tail. I can't imagine a duck.
There you
I
go.
guess-
Just
Put a
sort of-
sleep lead on
I
it.
guess,
Is that right?
I guess I'd rather fight 20 horses the size of ducks
He wants to show
because
us.
they're much smaller and easier. I just catch them all. Imagine, I just think about if I'm fighting 20 ducks or fighting a horse.
Yeah.
I think I'd rather fight 20 ducks than if I'm just imagining me fighting that massive duck. And I was thinking, he's got massive wings, and if he's anything like a goose and he decides to bash me with those wings, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. At least a horse hasn't got massive wings to bash you with.
I knew that a lot of thought would go into that question. Mate, thanks again for being on tonight. All our listeners there, thanks for getting on tonight, and everyone listening back to it. And please remember, we learn every day, and the day we stop learning will be a sad one for all.
Thank you.
Put the shotgun in.